Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is not the part 2 of this how to base that I was going to do, but it is the one that we're going to get because for some reason, the original part 2 recording decided that it wanted to have corrupted audio, which was great. So now I'm basically going to do the old format, which is I'm going to go over this kind of the same way I did in part 1, only way more in depth. Which is a shame because I actually had recorded me making this from scratch, and it's kind of what people like to see. And XSplit was like, no. Yeah. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you what the modulator sounds like by itself, because that's what I did first when I made it. I recorded the modulator, and then I proceeded to make the bass. So I'm just going to make this unique and put it in a new channel. Yeah. Recording. My voice sounds weird. I sound like Ensign Zulu. Yes, Captain. Yes. Alright. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I made the carrier. So the carrier is an FM citrus patch. And as I mentioned in part 1, it's not one easily redoable in FM8, which is what the popular, FM synth is. And that's because I utilized the RM matrix, which is not something that FM8 has. So what is this bass? Let's put this in not channel 1 so we can listen to it by itself. So I started off by changing all the operators to be 0.25. This is really just so that I can play on the keyboard and have it be the right octave. It also makes it easier to do high harmonics because if I did it 2, the high harmonic is like at lowest for what I do is 64, which is the maximum pitch ratio I can get to. So in this bow 0.25, the high harmonic is 8. So I have much more headroom to play with in terms of pitch height. So I modulated operator 1 by operator 2 with a triangle wave. And the reason why I do this is because the triangle wave creates a sharper tone. And the reason why that happens has to do with the fundamental method by which FM works. And that is to say, it applies the waveform of your modulating operator, in this case operator 2, onto the pitch of the modulated operator, which is operator 1, the carrier. And it does this by applying the slope, the change in slope of the waveform, which is a bit hard to grasp because on a sine wave, the change in slope calculation is more or less the same as if it just followed the shape of the waveform, because it's changing its slope a little bit, changes its back, and then now it's switched around, changing the other direction, so the pitch is going down. Now it's changing back, so it's going up, changing back up, that kind of thing. So that's what the slope does. However, on a triangle wave, there is no change in slope. The slope just switches polarity instantaneously twice, per period. So this means that it stays one pitch, and then it goes into another pitch, and then it stays one pitch, and then it goes to another pitch. And this creates a sharper thing because unlike on a sine wave, which sweeps through every frequency between the two highest points, which are the two high pitches, this just switches between the pitches, which is nice. At least, to my ears. And then operator 3 is a high harmonic. And when you introduce a high harmonic to something that's being modulated by a fundamental tone, this creates a vocally formanty kind of sound. And I go over this phenomena at length in How to Base 10 and How to Base 50, I think. How to Base 50, or might have been 60. I did it with FM8 as well to sort of to demonstrate how FM works. This is a very, very basic application of FM. Now, I'm also FMing operator 3 by operator 4. So this means that the high harmonic is being operated by a fundamental tone. And this gives it the sort of squelchy aspect. Now, the additional crunch we're getting is actually as a result of applying RM. So what I'm doing here is I'm ring modulating operators 2 and 3, which are the modulating operators. And so what this shape basically means is that for this section of the period, and the beginning of the period as well, this been phase shifted a little bit in the oscillator tab. which is what this little bar does here. These is phase amount. For that period, you can hear the modulation being applied, and then for this period, there is no modulation being applied. You can kind of see this in action. Although I have switched polarity at 2 and 3, and they're also not on 100%. Because I want a little bit of it to go through, but there's still a little bit of transition, and it's transitioning at the fundamental tone, the fundamental frequency, which is at this point 0.25. So it keeps the note frequency very much grounded in the sound, which is very nice. This was set to taste, like how much I wanted to go was set to taste, as well as like the phase position of operator 2 and 5. I also set 6 to be a sine wave and to output, and for the mod X to control the volume, so that when it approaches high, mod X that is, it's being reinforced by a sine wave, because when the FM is at 0, which is when X is at 0, the sound is just a sine wave. So, but then when it's at max, it's less like a sine wave than it is. So it's being reinforced so that the bass is constant. Yes. All right. So that's pretty much the carrier. This whole XY business, what I tried to do, and as I pointed out in part 1, I did not do, was I wanted to control the amount of secondary modulation on the high harmonic, which is operators 4 to operator 3. So I can either control the volume of operator 4 by mod Y, or I could control the mod input of operator 3 by mod Y. And with this setup, it's functionally identical. I did one this time. I got it right eventually, so that's what I'm doing. But when I started out doing part 1, and presumably all the way through part 2, I was not doing that. Yeah. So that's the carrier. Let's put that back in operator 1. I EQ'd it so that there's more higher frequencies coming out when it goes into the Vocodex. I'm going to make sure I got this right. Yeah. So, I made some automation for X, which is the main modulation, and Y to change character at some points. And I also cut up the modulator for the vocal and just put it in places, so that sounded good. In the Vocodex, I mostly knew that I wouldn't change too much in terms of like pitch and whatever, but the few things I did were important. So, in the modulator pitch, I made this go a little bit lower, but I also turned the pitch up a bit higher. And I did this because at that point, it sounded kind of cool to me. But as you see, there's a very huge width and variety of tones that you can make just by messing around with the pitch. The pitch shift window here does this per band. So these bands and what it progressively lower, I lowered a bit so that just happens that way. I kept the same voice number, order number 3, bandwidth was set to taste, and then the bandwidth multiplier originally I had set to be above a little bit, which actually makes it smooths it out a little bit. But I set it to be a little bit mostly center. And in the hold, attack, and release, the hold and attack are pretty high, which actually adds to the sort of robot-y sound, because if I reduced it, it applies itself as heavily as it can to the modulator's movements in the bands. And that makes it sound pretty watery usually. So if you increase it, we get a more sort of robot-y sound, which is nice. So I turned the carrier mix all the way up-ish, and then I low passed it to be a bit low. And what this does is it allows the dry carrier low end to come in. As you see the band gain, I've actually turned off the low end of the actual Vocodex output. And so this is so that the bass is being reinforced by the actual original sound. All right, so I got Maximus going on here. The lows are they're not really being that compressed, but they're kind of compressed. The mids are being left alone, and the highs have the most compression being applied to it. Now, what this shape does here is the double curve. If you right-click on a point, this is making it so that as it approaches this middle line here, it's actually bringing it up a little bit. But then as it gets too high, it's actually bringing it down a little bit. So this is actually pretty common in like de-esser plugins, this sort of shape. And what I've done this because the highs don't really ever get that high. But when they're at the highest that they want, they're pretty much at the midline. You can kind of see in the window here where this green area is. This green audio is the audio that's the result of being compressed, and the white audio is the original input. So as you see here with this part where there's no green audio and the white audio is as high as you get, you can even see the compression curve here. This is the height that I pretty much want it at, and so the green is being pulled up as it approaches that, and it's keeping the high frequencies even. So much so that I didn't really need to even do that much compression to keep the high frequency saturation pleasing to my ear. I mean, you can EQ as you want. As you see, my EQing was pretty light after the compression and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much it. I didn't really do things that fancy with this. The most sort of fancy thing being applied here is my ridiculous voice. Yeah. Still kind of a shame because I had a video where I was making this sound from scratch, but that's okay. This project is in the description of this video. If you have any questions about any of this, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day. Yeah.